Good morning. We are in Mishnah's bikurim, Perek Gimel, chapter 3, Mishnah Yud Aleph, Mishnah 11. We're going to today do two Mishnahs, Mishnah 11, Mishnah Yud Aleph, Mishnah Yud Beis, Mishnahs 11 and 12. I dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shalamis Rabinowitz, Shabbos Vas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. Emasai Amru Toisevas HaBikurim Ki Bikurim. When did they say the addition to the bikurim are like bikurim? So yesterday we were introduced to a concept of tosefes bikurim, which means that when a person designates ripening fruit to be bikurim for when they ripen, there was a practice to add more of that same fruit to the bikurim. They weren't the bikurim themselves, they were in addition to the bikurim. And according to Torah law, they don't have the status of bikurim, but the sages gave them the status of bikurim. To the fact that they also are given to a Kohen, and the Kohen has to eat in Yerushalayim. We also discussed what was called the Itur HaBikurim, the adornment of the bikurim, the bikurim that were hanging on the sides of the basket as an adornment to the bikurim, that they too are given to the Kohen, and the Kohen has to eat in Yerushalayim. Again, midrabanan, according to rabbinic law. So the Mishnah tells us that even though it only mentions tosefes, it applies to the itur also. That when do we say that the addition to the bikurim, and the adornment to the bikurim, that they are like bikurim, meaning that they go to the Kohen, only Kohen eats them, and he must eat from Yerushalayim. Bizman sheba min haaretz, only when they come from Eretz Yisrael itself, from the land, from Eretz Yisrael itself. Only then do the sages give these other fruits the same status as the bikurim. If they didn't come from the land of Israel itself, in a bikurim, they are not like bikurim. Now, what this means is when we say they didn't come from the land of Israel itself, Pratur explains it means that we have learned that the land on the eastern side of the Jordan River, which was conquered by the Jewish people in the desert before they entered the land of Israel, also had a status like Eretz Yisrael for many things. And bikurim was brought from those lands. So the bikurim, what the Mishnah is saying here is that when bikurim comes from the land east of the Jordan River, Eva HaYarden, on the other side of the Jordan River, although the bikurim is full-fledged bikurim, the tosefes, the addition, the itur, the adornment, does not have the status of bikurim. That status that we gave to these additional fruits only applies when they are an addition or adornment to bikurim from Eretz Yisrael proper. But if they are being added to or adorning bikurim that's coming from outside of Eretz Yisrael, although that bikurim one is obligated to bring, such as from the other side of the Jordan River, nonetheless, the tosefes, the additional fruits, the adornment fruits, do not have the status of bikurim. That's Mishnah Yud Beis. Lama amru habikurim k'nechsei kayin. There is a statement that we had before that bikurim are considered like the property of the Kohen. That's the statement. Bikurim, we know, they go to the Kohen, and they're considered like the property of the Kohen. So the Mishnah now asks, Lama amru habikurim k'nechsei kayin. For what purpose, in regard to what, do we say that the bikurim are like the property of the Kohen? And the Mishnah answers, a Kohen can use them to purchase servants, land, even a non-kosher animal. Meaning, although bikurim is given to the Kohen to eat, and it's a mitzvah to eat, nonetheless, it's a mitzvah to eat, I think it is. But nonetheless, if he wants to, he doesn't have to eat it. He can not only doesn't have to eat it, he can actually use it to purchase something else. And he can even use it to purchase something that's not edible. That's how far we say that bikurim belongs to the Kohen. In contrast to Meiser Sheni, the second tithing that one has in Yerushalayim, that there it's not considered like the property of the person who owns it. He must eat it or redeem it, and then the money has to be used for food. But bikurim is not that way. Bikurim can be used like any other barter, any other money. However, what's interesting to note is that if the Kohen is using his bikurim to buy something, well, at the end of the day, whoever he's using this bikurim, whoever he's giving this bikurim to, if that person is going to want to eat it, he has to be a Kohen. The fact that you use bikurim as a barter or as some kind of source of like using it like something that has value, like something that's something with the value of money, not money itself, but the value of money, doesn't take off the sanctity from the bikurim. The bikurim always stays bikurim. Only a Kohen can eat it. Only Yerushalayim. The point is, though, that if the Kohen wants to go to another Kohen, give him his bikurim and buy something from him with it, that's okay. And the Mishnah continues, a creditor can take the Kohen's bikurim as a payment for the debt. The Kohen owes somebody money, that person can take his bikurim as payment. Again, unlike Meiser Sheni, that's not yours, so it's not going to help. You can't take or give Meiser Sheni for payment because it's not yours to do. But the bikurim, it's not, to the person who owns the Meiser Sheni. But the bikurim belong to the Kohen. He can use it. The Baal Chov can take it as a payment. The ha'isha b'ksubasa, and an isha can take it for her ksuba. Now, ksuba means that a man promises his wife that if he divorces her or he dies before her, so he or his estate must pay her a certain amount of money. This payment is called ksuba, and the Mishnah is saying that the ksuba payment can be taken from bikurim. Now, they point out here in the notes that to say, meaning this is all examples of how far we say that this bikurim is his property. It's just like any other property that he has. But this halacha that she could take his bikurim as a payment is only as long as he's still alive, meaning if he divorced her. But after a man's death, the general rule is that his heirs need to pay the ksuba only with land that they inherited, and not with movable objects such as fruit. That's a law when it comes to the laws of paying ksuba. Okay. Okay. B'sefer k'sefer Torah, like a sefer Torah, meaning the way to read the Mishnah is, and a creditor can take it for his debt, and a woman can take it for her ksuba, like a sefer Torah. Bikurim can be taken by a woman for her ksuba, like a sefer Torah. Now, what that means like this. A Torah scroll may not be sold other than for a pressing need, such as marriage or learning Torah. Person needs to get married, can sell a sefer Torah to be able to do so. In order for him to be able to learn Torah, can sell a sefer Torah to do so. But you can't just sell a sefer Torah for anything. The Mishnah teaches that a Torah scroll may nevertheless be seized from its owner as a payment of a debt or a ksuba. That's the point. When the Mishnah says bikurim, a Baal Chov, a creditor can take, a woman can take for her ksuba, like a sefer Torah, means to say that bikurim are like a sefer Torah. Both can be taken either by a creditor or for a ksuba. My understanding is that, it's not like you can go over to the person right away and take their sefer Torah or take their bikurim. You demand payment. If they're not taking payment, then it's possible then to go again through the power through with permission of the Beis Din, or the Beis Din will do it to seize their property. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah is telling us. The bikurim are like the property of the Kohen. He basically can use it to buy anything he wants, and if people want to take it for a payment, they can do that, and they could also take a Torah sefer Torah for a payment, either for a debt or the moon for a ksuba. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says like this: you can only give bikurim to a khabar, literally means a friend, but a khabar in Mishnah means someone who accepts upon himself that he only eats, he doesn't eat anything unless he or the food are in a state of purity. You're not allowed to eat, a Kohen may not eat truma that becomes tamei. It became impure. If the Kohen is impure, he may not eat truma. But then there are people, not just Kohanim, but people that although there are foods that there's no prohibition to eat them if they're impure or you're in a state of impurity, there are people though who were careful and they were strict. They're stringent, and they wouldn't eat anything unless they were in a state of. They wouldn't eat things unless the food was in a state of purity. I just want to check something here. Yeah, that's what it says. even ordinary non-sacred food only when he and the food are tahar. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says you can only give bikurim to a khabar and as a favor, as a gift. So Rabbi Yehuda is making two statements. Number one, when anybody gives bikurim to someone, whether it's the original owner of the bikurim or the Kohen who received the bikurim that we say can now use it to buy things with, and he's going to give it to another Kohen, because that's the only person who can do anything with the bikurim, you have to make sure that this Kohen, whoever is giving it to the Kohen, again, either the first person or the second person, that Kohen has to be a khabar. Bikurim has to remain in a state of purity. If it comes in a state of impurity, it cannot be eaten, and that's not what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to remain pure and be eaten. So Rabbi Yehuda says you cannot give your bikurim to someone that you cannot be sure that he will watch the bikurim properly from becoming impure. And the only person that you can trust to do that is a khabar, a person who is so strict when it comes to purity, to tumen tahara, to impurity regarding his food, that even his regular food has to be tar and he has to be tar. Then you can give him bikurim. Why is Rabbi Yehuda being so strict? Why is he being so concerned? Why not give it to a regular Kohen? And the answer is because bikurim are not a sacrifice. Bikurim, yes, are brought into the courtyard, they're brought into the Beis HaMikdash, they're put by the altar, but they're not actually sacrificed. They're not part of an actual service. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda was concerned that people, therefore, will not be as careful with them as they are other holy objects. And therefore, if you're going to give it to anyone, whoever is giving bikurim to a Kohen has to give it to a Kohen that there's absolutely no doubt in our minds that he's going to watch it properly, because in general, he doesn't eat his food unless everything is pure. That's the first statement of Yehuda. That's what he means when he says, a noisnin oisem elo l'chaver, one can only be bikurim to a chaver, bit taiva. Taiva means as a favor. That means Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on the first part of the mission that says that Kohen can use bikurim for anything he wants. And Yehuda says, no, you cannot use a bikurim for barter. You cannot use bikurim to purchase something. You cannot use bikurim to pay a debt. At the end of the day, you cannot do that with bikurim. You want to give it to another Kohen? You want to give him a gift? Fine, give him a gift. And make sure he's the kind of Kohen, make sure he's a khabar. So there's two things Rabbi Yehuda is saying. Bikurim only goes to a khabar, a Kohen who's a khabar, and bikurim cannot be used to purchase things with. You can only give it away. Either you eat it or give it away to someone else to eat as a gift. The Chachamim say, you can give the bikurim to the members of the Mishmar. As we mentioned previously, the Kohanim were divided up into 24 groups. And meaning they were divided into 24 groups, and each group would serve 1 week, twice a year in the Beis HaMikdash. So according to the Chachamim, the bikurim you give to are to the members of the Mishmar, the members of the group that are working in the Beis HaMikdash that week. You cannot give it to another Kohen. That's who you give it to. You give it to the members of the Mishmar. So that's one thing that the Chachamim are telling us that we didn't know until now. And Rabbi Yehuda never even said you have to do that. According to the Chachamim, who does the bikurim go to? Not to any Kohen, but to a Kohen from the Mishmar. And then they divided. I'm sorry, let me read it right. You give it to the members of that group that are working in the Beis HaMikdash that week. And divided amongst themselves, like all other holy objects of the Beis HaMikdash. When you have sacrifices, what happens there? They divide it up, however they divide it. Here too, the bikurim goes, basically, you're going to give it to a Kohen, but he's not going to be the one to keep it necessarily. You're not giving it to him specifically. You're giving it to the members of the Mishmar, all the Kohanim of that group, and they divide it up like all the other things they divide up, like sacrifices. But what the Chachamim are also saying is, unlike Rabbi Yehuda that says it's got to go to a chaver, no, doesn't have to do that. You give it to the members of the Mishmar. If somebody that's who gets it. Any Kohen who's part of that week's Mishmar gets the bikurim. Doesn't have to be a khabar. And according to the Chachamim say we can trust any Kohen to make sure that it won't become impure, because although it's not a sacrifice, but it comes to the Beis HaMikdash, it's put near the altar. It's similar enough to a sacrifice that we don't have to be concerned, that we can feel confident that the Kohanim will protect it from impurity just like they would sacrificial meat. Okay. Continue with the laws of Rechilas, chapter 9 in the Chavetz Chaim, and we are in Sifa, paragraph 6. So the first thing that the Chavetz Chaim mentioned that we discussed yesterday is that, again, in a situation where a man or whoever it is, a parent, a person wants to make a match with someone else, wants to consider marriage with someone else, and for instance, you know that the young man being considered has some serious deficiency, and the young woman's side does not have any idea about that. Then you can tell them, but it has to be a serious deficiency. In the case of health, it has to be that the person has a real medical condition, not just that they're a little bit weak, not about things that really don't make a difference. Those are the only types of conditions, health issues, that you can now share to help the person not get involved in something that they never wanted to get involved to and have a right not to get involved with. Then there's another case where you need to reveal to him a problem with, again, let's say the young man. If it's been heard about the chassan that he has heretical beliefs. In the Chavetz Chaim's times, young men, even in the most religious communities, were I can't find the right word, but we're in danger of being influenced by others, like communists or Bundists, and others like that, who are anti-religious and who tried influencing the youth away from religion. And even ones that let's say outwardly be practicing religion because they couldn't break away from their families, but it didn't mean that they hid their heretical beliefs. That they didn't believe in Jewish religion. They didn't believe in God, chas v'shalom. They didn't believe that Torah comes from Hashem, chas v'shalom. So it was not uncommon that could be heard about a young man. But that is something that is clearly a very, very serious problem, a very serious deficiency. And you may go ahead and tell the other side about that. The Torah tells us, do not bear tales about your friend. Right after it says, don't stand by the blood of your friend. Yeah, don't go ahead and speak Lashon Harah rechilas, but don't stand by by the blood of your friend. If we're talking about getting involved in someone that is an apikaris, that's a catastrophe for anyone to have to get involved with such a person. Let's say the problem is that he's not that learned. He's not that learned in Torah. Okay, if that's the issue, meaning he's looking for someone who's a Torah scholar. Okay, and he's getting involved with someone that is not such a Torah scholar. So it seemed like it would make sense to let him know. I mean, if you're looking for a Torah scholar, that means that the dowry was different and the other conditions that you made up were different. That was a common practice. It was understood that the young woman's side, if they want a Torah scholar for a son-in-law, that it comes with support. But if he's not such a Torah scholar, then that would be a mistake on their part. And if you know about it, it would seem like you can tell them. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, you can't. Ein legalislo, you cannot reveal that to him. Why? Chavetz Chaim says, because you know what? The young woman's side are really responsible for this. They have created this loss to themselves. Listen to the way the Chavetz Chaim says it. Again, this is something you have to understand how things worked in his days. He should have taken him to other Torah scholars, and they should have tested him to see how learned he is. V'im asakain hemshichem leimer emes. And if, let's say, this young man is brought to the Torah scholars to be tested to see how knowledgeable he is, they have to go ahead. Those Torah scholars testing him have to be truthful. Because that's the agreement here. That's the whole point. If you could take this young man to other scholars to test him out and see how learned he is, that means that everybody agrees that the point here is that he should be a Torah scholar. Otherwise, we're not interested. And he's willing to be tested. So therefore, if everybody here is in on it, the Torah scholar is doing the testing, for sure have to tell the truth. And if the young woman's side didn't do that, then that means it doesn't really make a difference to them. So the point of the Chavetz Chaim was, and again, we have to understand how things were done. At least the way it was done then. The way things were done then was that if you wanted a Torah scholar as a young man, you would take him to be tested. For a son-in-law, you would take him to be tested. Not just ask people, you would get him tested. And if you're not testing him, that means you're not serious about it. Apparently, it's a very common thing to go ahead and do that, to get them tested. And therefore, if they didn't do it, then that's their problem. That means they're not serious about it. And therefore, you don't have to go now and tell them, oh, he doesn't know how to learn, or he's not that scholarly. That's their problem. That's what they have to find out. And if they didn't find out about it, then it's on them. So basically, that's a situation where we say, something, it's important to them or seemingly important to them, but you should be the one revealing it because it's not your responsibility to reveal it. It's their responsibility to find out on their own. Have a wonderful day.